Welcome to Motormouth, here for our Duryea Day special here in 2018. It's September 1st. We're here at the Boyertown Community Park. It's a little overcast today. We had a few misting this morning, but it's dry. Yeah, it's great now.
Yeah.
Relatively, yeah.
A couple places it's mushy to walk
There's a
on.
puddle right over there, but
Yeah.
the camera doesn't
Okay.
see that right now.
No, keep that off.
We are actually standing in the middle of the flea market. Duryea Day always gets a good flea market out here. Dan's already looking at stuff to buy when the camera stops rolling. But yeah, the flea market is just one part of the show here. We're going to go out and talk to some of the car owners and a truck owner that have joined us today. Oh, that's right. We have two. The one's a little tricky there, but
Fooled you.
half truck, half car. You'll have to stay tuned and find out. And we just want to thank the sponsors of our show, BB&T Bank, continuing to be a generous sponsor of Duryea Day. Thank you to Gablesville Athletic Association, to Classic Auto Mall, to Pollock Auto Restoration, and to Suburban Water Technology. The show wouldn't be possible without our sponsors. So thank you all for generously helping out Duryea Day like you do every year.
So, although you're seeing this, Duryea Day's already over when you viewed it.
Yes, yes.
See it, okay?
Yep.
So obviously you can't come to this one. But next year we'll have another one, Labor Day weekend, Saturday before Labor Day.
Yep.
And it's great. And it'll be nicer weather.
Yep. We're due for a nice weather year now next year.
This is a couple years in a row
So,
now.
but we're gonna go out and check out some cars.
Yep.
So we'll meet you all in the back field.
Okay.
All right, today we are here with a familiar face, if you're a loyal viewer, because Wayne's been on our show before at the museum. So Wayne, you come to Duryea Day every year. You have a different car today than what you brought to the show before. What do you have today?
Today I have a 67 Chevelle that I've owned for 39 years.
39. So you bought it new or?
No,
well,
no.
Actually, 67, 39, that wouldn't work. So no.
Is
You
it?
bought it used, I guess.
Well, I bought it in 79, whatever,
Yeah.
how much that
Okay.
is. And it's a little bit of the history of the car is it was originally purchased at Quigley Chevrolet in Valley by a man who lived in 6th Street in Boyertown.
Okay.
And he traded it in to Boyertown Motors, and then a friend of mine, you guys know, Mike Yanessa,
Right.
bought it. He had it for a couple years, and then he sold it to me in 79, and I've had it ever since.
Okay. Wow. So the lineage is like we connected with every name, address, company, dealership.
Yeah, it's
that's
a
kinda
local,
neat.
always been in the area, you know, since it was new.
So now, have you done anything? I mean, this paint looks new.
Yes, when I bought the car, I drove it for years as a back and forth to work car, and then
Right.
in 1987, I decided to retire it, and then I had it repainted. A fellow named Ronnie Evans painted the car outside behind his house.
Okay.
And also I did the seat covers and the rugs and the package shelf. Other than that, the car is factory original.
Okay.
And the wheels are Corvette rally wheels, but I have the original hubcaps and steel wheels for it. And I used to drive it in the wintertime, put my town and country snow tires on it and drive it in the snow, you know, for years.
Well, then it was probably more just like a used car to you then, back then when you
Well,
drove it in the snow.
I had another 67 Chevelle, which was a blue one that I bought in high school.
There's the blue one.
We were just talking about that, weren't we?
I bought that in
yeah.
high school, and I had that for 26 years, and
Okay.
still don't know why I sold it, but I did. And I kept this one because it was a good, dependable car. It's always, you know, when you want to need to go somewhere. In fact, it still has a PA tag on it and it's inspected. I can drive it every day if I want.
Yeah.
And,
But you don't.
No, not anymore. It's just used for
Yeah.
nice drives and on a nice day. But I'll take it to a shopping or now and then. But I try to be more careful with it.
To show it off.
Yeah, it deserves what you call like a survivor kind of. It's being with the original engine and you know, a lot of the original parts on the car yet. It's a lot of people call them survivors. That through time, it's still going.
Okay. Now, our viewers, I asked Wayne to bring. He has a '55 all original Chevy, and that was cool. I was hoping he'd bring it. This is a good replacement. I like this too. So
maybe next year we'll get the '55. I haven't had it over here for quite a few years now, and it's about time to bring that one over.
Like
but
next
that's a nice one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we already talked. We're gonna get the '55 on sometime.
Yep.
But that was funny because you were looking for a blue car.
Yeah.
And we were wondering if you repainted it, but no, you had two.
I had two of them. For some reason, I like the '67 Chevelle over the other years, and when it comes to the old Chevys, I like the '55 over, you know, some people like the '57 and '56, but I'm a '55 person. And then when it comes to Corvettes, I like the Stingrays, and you know, we had the '63 on one time.
Yes.
Yes, before Wayne had the Stingray, so today you brought the Chevelle, and you come to Duryea every year pretty much, don't you?
My 41st year in a row.
Wow.
It doesn't seem that long, but I'm, you know, all the way back to when it was over at the factory yet.
I was going to say it wasn't even at this location.
No, it was, you know, we didn't think back then that we'd ever even be over here because, you know, it just outgrew that area. It just had too many cars coming, and which is great. It, you know, it's been building and over the years to, you know, all the cars that we get here now. It's really, and I can't believe it. It keeps on going, which is good.
Yes,
you know,
it is.
We love, you know, coming here with our cars, and I just hope it keeps on going.
And I think one of the things, that keeps going is you look around. There's all sorts of vehicles. You know, I mean, your car is stock, except for the wheels, and but we have customized cars here. We got newer ones here. There's a whole slew of Model A's up there and stuff. You know, just a good mixture of
pretty
things.
Pretty much, you know, whatever you like is pretty much here.
Right. Yep.
And I just kind of miss all the really older cars, but those kind of fellas have gone on that had the real old cars in the olden days. I don't know whatever happened to the cars, but I kind of miss seeing some of those real old cars from the teens and 20s.
Well, thank you for always coming to the show. You're 41. We appreciate your support, and thanks for being on the show and showing up this one.
All right.
We'll have you again. Don't worry.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're here with Ben Cole, and we're now at the back end of the vehicle. We usually start at the front. Ben, what do you have here today?
1958 Ford Ranchero.
All right.
Okay, and I understand you just got this recently, right? Like in the past year?
About a year ago.
Yeah. So how do you find vehicles like this? This is a nice vehicle.
I found it. I knew the guy that owned it for a long time, and I didn't know it was up for sale until recently when he had to go in a home. The nephew called and told he had to sell the cars.
And I believe you're the second owner, correct?
Yes.
So we're seeing this, and what's the mileage?
43,500, I think.
This is one unique vehicle, folks. So this is a Ranchero. I guess they made just 57, 58, and then they skipped a few years.
No,
right?
59 they still made these.
Oh, they did. Okay, and then they went to the Falcon size.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is neat. So this is a big car. Now, does it ride like a pickup or does it ride like a car?
It rides more like a car than a pickup truck. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Because I know you also have a 57 convertible.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Which I've seen. And so did you have to do anything to it after you purchased it? Like.
Yes. This hadn't run for 38 years.
38 years. Yeah.
Wow. So I had to redo the whole brake system. I had to get the engine running, which had a stuck valve. We redid the complete brake system, of course, new gas tank, complete tune-up, engine carburetor rebuild, I should say, a new water pump, new tune-up.
That stuck valve, is that why it didn't run for 38 years?
Well, he had a problem where he fired it up in 1980 to take it for a ride, and it was acting up. He didn't know what was wrong with it. He backed it back in the garage and left it sit.
Wow.
And what it was, the valve stuck from him not driving it much.
Got it.
He just left it sit like that.
Yeah.
And now when he got to be 80 years old and he had to go to a home, he had to sell the vehicle. And then I purchased it.
And you were there ready?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So
to find one of these that's rust-free is very hard.
Yeah.
Especially in this area.
Right. Well, yeah.
I mean, when I was a teenager, I tried to buy one of these, and everything you looked at was all rusted out. So
okay.
Now I have one that isn't rusted out.
Yeah. And
60 years later.
A couple. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's pretty good.
So you've had your eye on these for a long time. Then you've been looking for one.
To find a nice one. Yes. Yes. And I like the color.
Okay. Now, before we leave here, you were just saying you just got a 58 DeSoto, right?
Yes.
So we're going to see that here next year, right?
Probably.
Okay. Same spot, sort of?
Yeah.
Okay, so all you people coming to Duryea Day, come to this spot. You'll see Ben and his 58 DeSoto. Showed me a picture of it. It's pretty neat. Needs some cleaning up, but it's a nice car.
That's a one-owner, 33,000-mile car.
Yeah.
Yeah. No rust.
You have connections. You have connections, yeah.
My 57 convertible's one-owner, too.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I pestered that guy 42 years for that car.
Wow.
And I didn't get it till he passed away.
Okay.
But that has 65,000 miles on it. Yeah. That's original paint and interior also. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for bringing this out.
And now I know you've only had it about a year or so, you said, but I mean, you've done like the show circuit. It gets attention, I would imagine.
Yes, this gets more attention than the convertible. I don't know why, but it does. It gets more attention.
I've never seen one here before that I can remember.
See these very often. No.
Well, you know, when I saw you at McCungy, and you know, you said you had the 57 convertible at McCungy, and then you said, well, I'm bringing my Ranchero to Duryea Day, and showed me a picture, and I'm thinking, yeah, cool.
Yeah, this is my newest car. Well, I got the DeSoto now, but so I'm taking this to the shows this year as a new piece in my collection.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing your DeSoto next year.
That'll be here, I'm sure.
All right.
Okay, well, now we're here with Bob Stout, and this is quite an eye-catching car. So I want to hear more about this. What do you have here today?
This is a 1957 Mercury Turnpike Cruiser. It was the top-of-the-line Mercury for 1957.
I don't think I've ever seen this before. It's sharp. I like it a lot.
Well, it had a lot of unique styling features that were brought to it from a concept vehicle that was designed and shown on the international show circuit in 1956. It was an experimental Mercury called the XM Turnpike Cruiser, which has just changed hands, and a new owner has now decided to restore the car. So I'm anxiously awaiting the following of that restoration, because it's what the production cars were based on.
So this car here, there was questions right before we went on the air. Our camera guy asked about these right here, for instance, and you don't see these on your run-of-the-mill. I'm looking down here at these cars, those cars. You don't see anything like this.
No, you won't.
So this is a
Turnpike Cruiser only item. They were on 1957 and 1958 Turnpike Cruisers.
And
they're fresh air vents.
Fresh air vent.
The gimmick was on the turnpikes you could open up all the air vents and put down the rear window and leave all the side windows up, and you would eliminate a lot of the traffic noise, but you would get just as much air as if you had all the windows down in the car.
So in this car, folks, the rear window does go down.
Yep.
And I think
it's a power rear window.
Yeah, the power wheel.
All Turnpike Cruisers had a power rear window.
And I think that, and it's also like, is that a reverse? Okay, no, it isn't.
The later 60s Mercuries had the reverse slanted rear window.
Okay,
they called it breezeway ventilation.
Yes. Okay.
But it actually started with the 57s.
So
I don't recall what the gimmick was back then.
So there's a lot of gimmicks and gadgets and stuff that they had. This is like 1957. I mean, this is what it was all about. And
this model or this car here is actually fairly stripped as far as it doesn't have a lot of options. I have another one at home that needs restoration that is power everything. It has power windows, power antenna. It's basically loaded with all the power gadgets. The only thing this one does have is power lubrication. There's a button on the dash that you push and it greases the front of the car while you drive. It has small hoses that go to all the ball joints and tie rod ends and everything, and it gives it a squirt of grease while you're driving.
That was probably high tech for back then. If it worked, right? Was there a problem?
Actually, when I bought this car, I was surprised that everything was still hooked up in that, because normally after they got a couple years old and you couldn't buy the replacement grease cans, a lot of guys just cut all the lines off and put normal grease fittings in.
Okay.
But this one is all intact. It's all still hooked up and basically ready to grease.
Okay. Now, there is something on the floor right in here, and you got to talk about that. When I first saw this car a couple months ago, or a month ago, I asked about it, and there's a unit, and what is that?
It's what they refer to as a swamp cooler. I don't know exactly what the technical name was for it back then, but you basically could put cold or ice water in the unit, and you plugged it into the cigarette lighter, and it had a fan, and it would blow cool air just like air conditioning.
Right.
Poor man's air conditioning, I guess you could call it. But these were available at your stores like Sears and JCPenney and stuff like that. It was produced by a company called Bon Air. Okay. And they were very popular in the Southwest, which is where the car is originally from, Arizona. They didn't work too good in the Northeast because your air was humid enough so as it was in the summer. But when you're in an arid, dry climate, it's something that they use to try to keep cool out.
Occasionally, I'll see the units that hang outside, and
it's
it
the
looks
same
like a
principle.
cylinder.
Yeah, those units, they use the air rushing through from the car moving. It was nice while you were moving, but while you were sitting at a traffic light, it could still get pretty hot. This, with being plugged into your cigarette lighter, it has fans that blow just like your air conditioning in a car or whatever. And
now this is a Turnpike Cruiser, so does it really cruise on the Turnpike?
It gets along real nice, actually. It is a nice driving car. I have other 57 vehicles. I have a 57 Plymouth and a 57 Ford. And this car floats compared to those cars.
Okay.
When you're cruising along on the road, it rides nice and smooth.
Cool.
Yep. It's got a nice long wheelbase, and it's got power steering, power brakes, which weren't standard on Turnpike Cruisers, but almost all of them had them.
Really? Okay.
The power steering and brakes.
All right.
How long have you had this?
I've owned the car about 10 years. I went out to Michigan, and I found it in Craigslist, and I went out to Michigan, and the car barely drove good enough for me to get it on a trailer. I had to go over everything fuel related and brake related on the car, and I did that over a winter. I bought it in, I think, around August, and by the following spring I was ready to hit the roads with it. So the engine didn't really need any work, but I knew it didn't have a lot of miles on it because I took the lower grill off here to polish it and clean it up, and there weren't any bugs stuck in the front of the radiator, so I knew the guy didn't drive it much. I don't know if he was sickly or for a while, but the car's mostly all original. The paint's mostly all original. The tops of the hood, or tops of the fenders in the hood, were resprayed. But other than that, the paint's all original. And it didn't have the cruiser skirts on it when I bought it, but I knew it had them originally because there's brackets on the lower quarter panel for the skirts to go on. So I had a pair, so I painted them up and put them back on the car. So it's pretty much the way it was when it was new, the way I have it now. So.
Okay. Well, thanks for bringing it. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
It was
enjoy
good
driving the car. It's a fun car to drive.
And I like your air conditioner. That's just so many things. So.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we moved over to the truck show field, and we've got this great 1918 Packard here, which actually, until this morning, was on display at the museum for the past month. So thank you, Dave, for letting us have it.
It really is.
So this is Dave Lockard, and Dave, you've let us borrow this truck, and now it's here at the field. Obviously, it's a World War I truck. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it? It has a lot of history.
Well, Kendra, my experience with this it goes back to the fact that back in the 50s and the 60s, I actually knew a couple World War I veterans. One of them was my next door neighbor, and in 1916, he was a volunteer to the French Army driving an ambulance for the American Ambulance Field Service, the AAFS. And he ended up being a big executive at the Exide Corporation. His name was Lester Lighton. And my other inspiration was I worked at a large restaurant in suburban Philadelphia in Glenside called the Casa Conti, which was started by a World War I veteran, Joseph Conti. Joe was an Italian that got his citizenship by serving in the U.S. Army, and a very colorful fellow, and had been through the cook and baker school at Fort Meade. And I asked him what it was like, and he said, "Well, I was Italian. I got my citizenship by serving in the Army." And I said, "Well, tell me a little bit about your experience." Well, apparently after the war, they kept him as part of the occupation force, and they asked him to prepare a meal for President Woodrow Wilson in 1919, which he did. And then, hold the microphone, and then I asked him, what was it like to serve a meal to the president? And do you know many Italian folks?
Yeah, I better stand back, right?
He says, "He give me a picture." And I said, "Excuse me?" "He give me a picture." I said, he signed a picture. "Yeah." "Of him?" "Yeah." "You're kidding. What did you do with it?" "I tore it up. I thought he'd give me some money. He don't give me money. He give me a picture." At any rate, this fellow was my inspiration for this truck. And also to learn about different things about the war, that there was 116,316 Americans that died in World War I, and over half of them died from non-combat injuries, from trench foot, from the Spanish flu, just from horrible diseases. I'm also a volunteer out at the Carlisle Army Heritage Center, and work with school groups at the trench exhibit to explain what the World War trenches were like. This truck here was a 14-year project, and we ended up getting the wheels and the frame from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Someone asked me, "Where's Calgary?" I said, "Well, you go out to California and hang a right and keep going," which probably was a wise answer. At any rate, we got the engine from New York, and a fellow by the name of Dave Jacoby custom built the body, which is a duplicate of the Brill Company, who built trams and trolleys and buses in Philadelphia, the John George Brill Company, and we've duplicated that. And this gentleman, Dave Jacoby in Gettysburg, volunteered and made the entire body as just a donation.
So what you're saying is, although the truck is authentic of the year, the body is newer. However, it's authentic because it's created from the U.S. War Department plans of April 1917. Right. And I'm thinking,
now we did not put the 2 pounds of white lead in the paint, which was on the recipe. We just thought that would probably be a nice thing to do.
That was nice.
But anyhow, I have this truck in the Memorial Day Parade in Washington for the last 5 years, and it's an honor to do that. It really is. And it's an honor to have it at the Boyertown Museum.
So that was another thing. Now this is a 1918, correct? Okay. Yeah. And there's a significance of 1918 because this is the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I.
And I'm a member of the United States World War I Centennial Commission. With the truck being in the Memorial Day Parade, it's an honor to do that, to recognize those who are no longer and haven't been with us for many years.
So how hard is it to find information about a truck so it could be restored correctly? You mentioned how you went and, you know, it came from
I have just had
Calgary
amazing help from friends. Back in '95, a fellow sent me a whole stack of original Packard publications. He said, I can tell you're really into it. I want you to have this. And I'm sure he's long since passed away. And folks just saying, oh, I have this that I can give you. For example, the thing on top here is called a motometer. And I had a friend of mine give me that. He said, that belongs on your truck.
Okay.
So it's just fun to relive a little bit of history 100 years ago.
So you've driven this like in parades and such,
Absolutely,
right? Okay.
yeah.
Now, I have a feeling, being one, it's a truck, and two, it has solid tires, it's not real comfortable.
Oh, it is very comfortable. It's just when it's moving, it's not. with a 17-mile-an-hour top speed.
Right, right.
If you look at the truck, 70% of your braking is on the front brakes. This truck has no front brakes.
Okay.
And basically, when you push your pedal down, it's mechanical rods that go back to the drive shaft. It does a lot of things. I mean, heart palpitations, beads of sweat, but it doesn't stop. So the emergency brake is on the rear drums.
Right.
So you work the drums a lot more than the pedal.
Now, I've seen this truck a number of times, and you...
My wife has said that too.
Okay. You show, you have signage with it and pictures and stuff. So you're quite a collector of...
Oh, yeah. Anything's related to
World
War I.
Or Packard trucks, or both?
Both.
Okay.
Having 2 more Packard trucks at home.
Okay, so you're like, you know, the expert?
An X is somebody that can't do it anymore, and a spurt is a drip under pressure. Okay. So be careful what you call me, please.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
but I do enjoy it and share my findings with others.
Okay. And again, where's this going after?
It's going home to be put to bed for probably at least 2 or 3 weeks. It'll be on display in Gettysburg.
Okay.
They have Old Gettysburg Place on the streets of Gettysburg. On the 22nd of September, we'll have it out there.
Okay.
And it'll be in front of the house of the fellow that passed away that lent me that motometer.
Okay.
Dave English, good friend of mine, good Packard man.
Yeah, all right. So, is there any bad Packard people?
I haven't found any, but there's some great people up at the Boyertown Museum, though.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so.
Okay.
Now, I found that in the hobby, the old vehicle hobby, it's a lot of good people there.
Absolutely.
You know,
the body was made by a volunteer. The canvas was donated and sewn up. The fellow that made the starter for me, custom made it, donated it. I mean, it was just, they wanted to help us for the veterans. And that's what my whole thing is.
So again, this is a 100-year-old vehicle. I know it drives. I haven't seen it live, but when you brought it into the museum, I think, Kendra, you had a video or something, and I showed. Yeah, and so I saw it moving. So
it does move.
Did you drive it over to here today?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so what is that? 3/4 of a mile?
And 5 traffic jams.
5 traffic jams.
And a lot of people in back waving their fists. But it was fun.
It was patriotic fists.
Patriotic fists, absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate this.
Thank you. Of course, 2018 now is the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I, so I'm sure it actually probably has a busy fall ahead of it. Yeah.
I'll be at Hershey and have a number of venues to attend, and it's an honor to do it.
Well, it was an honor for us to have it. I know, we tried to get some World War II things, or World War I things, and we were happy that you lent it to us.
That was back when the Dead Sea wasn't even sick, so thank you.
Thank you. And one other thing, I thought there's an interesting story, I thought, behind the seat, too, isn't there?
The seat actually came from a Packard. In 1903, Packard had a car called Old Pacific, and it was the first car to drive cross-country. And they saved this car, and in 1915, when they brought the car out from storage to show all the progress, they looked at the seat, and the seat there were 2 big opera-like seats, and they tore them off and went to the truck line and got a truck seat. In 1981, a fellow by the name of Terry Martin restored the seats back to the way this 03 Packard should look, and he gave me the original seat. And that's the reason why it is not painted.
Okay.
It still has the factory pinstriping on it.
Yes.
So that's the story.
Very nice. I like it. I like it.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing it here and for letting us have it at the museum. It was very popular with people, and
Good. Hope you made some money out of it.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, well, we're here with another familiar face, Ron Smith. I believe you were on the Duryea show last year with a Han fire truck, I think.
I think it was the year before.
The year before. And then you've also been at the museum talking about one of our Model Ts. So Ron's back today.
Critiquing our Model Ts.
That's right.
Yeah, showing us why it was incorrect.
Yes, we were correct.
I almost used the word why it was wrong, but I'm not going to. Incorrect
sounds better.
Sounds more professional.
Yes.
Curatorial.
Yes.
But it was good because we had a nice history of the Model T as well. So now we're going to go to another make, good old Chevy, and you've got two here today, and they're both pretty rare to understand, right?
Yes. Here we have a 1919 Chevrolet Baby Grand Touring Car, and here we have a 1922 Chevrolet 490 Utility Coupe.
Okay, Baby Grand. Why did they call it Baby Grand?
Because it's big.
It's big.
It's big. And this time period, in the mid-teens, Chevrolet wasn't sure if they wanted to build economy cars, because then they had Model T Ford for competition, which was really, they were the #1 car. So they didn't know if they wanted to compete with Ford or if they wanted to build luxury cars. So actually in the mid-teens, Chevrolet was building both. And the 490 Utility Coupe is the economy version, and the Baby Grand is the luxury version. That's why it's so long.
But Baby Grand, I mean, I think of a piano. Is that the connection?
I think so, because the Baby Grand piano is big.
Yeah.
I think that's its way of saying big.
And it's interesting. And that's like the touring car.
Yes.
If I'm right, isn't like the Roadster that's called the Royal Mail?
That was the Royal Mail with the Roadster. Yes.
Okay.
It was still the FB series was the letter designation. They were both FBs.
Okay. And this one here to our right, call that a 490. Now, is it true that that designation came up for the price of the car?
Well, it was the price of when the 490 came out in 1916. That was the price of a Model T Ford. And they called it the 490 because it was their goal to reach the price of a Model T Ford with the Chevrolets. The only problem was it never happened because, well, immediately when Ford found out that they used his price for their model designation, he immediately lowered his price. And then Chevrolet never got to the 490, plus they never got to what he had lowered it.
Right. All right.
So it never quite succeeded in that.
So these cars here, you've restored them yourself or bought them this way?
That one we restored.
Okay.
This one we did some on. This one had some engine trouble when we got it. We fixed that up. The top has been replaced. The seats are the same, and most of the body work is the same. There's some panels that were repaired. That was totally gone over.
Okay, this is totally gone over, so there's probably a good story behind this?
Well, that actually was in Center Hall, Pennsylvania, where we got it at a real little Chevrolet dealership. Now, Center Hall is just south of State College. And it was in a Chevrolet dealer owned it. My father was real good friends with the owner. The owner's name was Bill Reese. And my father actually started the restoration when he had it. And then he did the mechanical part, and he did the interior. And then the guy was going to have his body shop do the body work. And that never materialized, and he came down with multiple sclerosis and eventually passed away. But before he passed away, he called my father up and asked him if he wanted the car. And my father said no. And when I came home from work, my father told me that he had called and he asked if he wanted the car, and he said no. And I said, well, I want it. So he told me call him. So we called him, and then we got the car, and then we finished the restoration on it.
Okay. I mean, it is nice looking. And, you know, I think we've talked about this before, but this is a 22. That's a 1919. You see Fords quite often. You know, you go to Hershey, you're going to see them all over the place.
Yes.
But Chevys, you just don't see.
You don't see Chevrolet because a couple things. One, Ford built a lot more of them. The other thing was the Fords held up a lot better.
Okay.
These are a nuisance. You're always working on them. They don't run that good when they do run. They have a real wicked clutch in them. It was called a cone clutch, and that actually had a tendency of breaking up the drivetrain. So they had their share of mechanical problems, and also the bodies are framed in wood like the Model Ts, but Ford used oak and hardwoods, where Chevrolet was big for using softwoods, and they just really rotted. So
okay, that's interesting.
Now this body, though, it's a very unique body. It's a 22 car, but the body was the first Fisher body that Chevrolet used, and it was supposed to be on the 23 Chevrolet, but the bodies came in early. 22 wasn't a good sales year, so Chevrolet still had chassis. So what Chevrolet did was they put the 23 body on the 22 chassis, which is what makes this one really rare. Then some of the components on it would be 22, some would be 23, where they just kind of pieced them together. The only thing was the rear fenders. The 490 fenders did not work, and the 23 Superior fenders did not work. So the fenders are unique to this particular model. It was a mid-year model.
You were telling me something about obtaining the fenders for these.
Yes,
for one of these.
That was this one.
Okay.
It was those rear fenders. I found them in I think it was Minnesota. And a guy had them, and we were talking, and I shouldn't have told him, but I told him what they were. And he said, well, that means they're worth a fortune then. And I said, well, not really, because I said, I think there's only 3 of these cars in existence, and the other 2 don't need fenders. And I said, and I have fenders that I can use. So I said, I don't really need them. So I said, that means if you want to sell these fenders, you're dealing with me. And then he came to a real reasonable price, so I got his new fenders then.
I thought that was pretty slick. Remember you telling me that a couple months ago. So.
Yes, that's how we did. So this has actually new old stock rear fenders on it. And I do have the original fenders that were on it, though, are at home. So,
okay.
So that's pretty much the story with that car. That car is very rare because of that half a year thing. And this car, the 1919, it's very rare because it's the luxury model. And they made them from 1914, I believe. Yeah, 14 was the first Baby Grand, up until 1922. But you see more 14s and 15s and some 16s, but after that you don't see many Baby Grands. And so that makes this car very rare also.
Okay.
And they didn't sell too many. They also made, which I don't have any, in 1917 was the first Chevrolet V8.
As you were telling me that, I was thinking, you know, they had the V8 in there somewhere.
Yes,
too.
yes.
Yeah.
The V8 was in 1917, and that was made in 1917 and 1918. There were some 1919s, but they were basically 1918s that didn't sell.
Okay. But they didn't make a lot of them, did
No,
they?
no, very few. Very few, and because the roads and such were such that the engine was too much, the car was actually too fast for what the roads were, so it would be a waste for most people to buy. And since Chevrolet kind of got burnt on it, they didn't build another V8 until 1955.
So, these cars, Let's see. Well, I'll say this one. This is the easier math. 99 years old, and then this one would be 96. Did I get that right? Yeah.
Yes, 96.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you don't drive these a lot. Like you didn't drive, you know, from Harrisburg to here with each one of them.
These.
But the thing is, you know, how do they drive? I mean, you're so used to driving today's cars, and there's.
These actually, in some ways, they're easier than like a Model T Ford, because a Model T Ford, you have the 3 pedals that everyone gets confused on and all.
Right.
These are basically a 3-speed manual transmission. You have the cone clutch you have to be careful of, and your throttle is on the steering column and not instead of on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
But your clutch pedal's in the same place, your brake pedal's in the same place. Your shift pattern would be the same as a 4-speed or a 3-speed on the floor. So that part is pretty much the same as a modern car.
Okay.
So why is the cone clutch tricky? Because we have some cars with that at the museum, and the guys complain about that too. What's tricky about
it? What it is it's like 2 different cones with different angles, and it's like you're pushing the one into the other, and you have a facing which is made out of leather. And what happens when you are letting the clutch pedal out to move, you're forcing the one cone in the other. So what happens is you're letting it out a long distance where nothing happens, and then all of a sudden it is fully engaged. And with leather yet, it really grabs. So like when I was driving this one over, I'm sure if you would have been watching the wheels on the wet grass, they're actually trying to spin, and it's very jerky. So that's the thing that...
yeah, you were kind of concerned about that coming in because of the wet grass, as you said. So.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And a couple weeks ago, this one was at Macungie, and if you remember Macungie, it was very soft at Macungie because of all the rain.
Swampy would be a better word.
Yes,
yeah.
And in fact, this one still has some Macungie mud on the tires from that.
vintage Macungie mud?
Yes, vintage Macungie mud, yes.
I think the Packard Army truck that we talked to also had some Macungie mud on it, so
yes,
it's all right.
yeah, that Macungie was kind of a muddy mess this year.
It was.
So, I don't know.
You mentioned about hard driving. I forget how you said that a moment ago, and I'm a witness of that because I remember when we were trying to start this when you first got here today, you couldn't start it.
Yeah, it didn't want to.
And so we used people power to get it
to
this position.
Actually, that wasn't too bad where I was at though. I was steering.
Yeah.
So that wasn't too bad.
Well, I just came over here and told you where to park.
Yeah.
So
that one. Hopefully, that one will fire up later on today.
Yeah.
This one didn't do too bad.
No, and I was already gone. So.
Although I don't know if you noticed, as soon as it fired, I wanted to get it over here right away because I didn't trust it a whole lot.
Okay.
But it made it over.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of the story of these two. They're kind of neat. They're both pretty rare cars. One thing I've been looking at here, I'm surprised you didn't ask me. But see that goofy thing on the fender, right here?
Okay.
Most people, when they restore them, try to take them off because they say that was a patch. That wasn't a patch. That was Chevrolet had a problem with the fenders cracking there. That was a reinforcement from new.
Okay.
But it looks very rough.
It does. It looks like a mistake.
Yeah.
It's like an engineering mistake, though, not a restoration mistake.
No, that's right. You should have them on because that was a Chevrolet fix.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you go to, well, you know, in a Chevy meet, if you go to just a Chevy meet and you're getting judged and stuff, unless the judges really know what they're looking at. But then again, how many of these show up at a Chevy meet?
There was a Chevy meet, a national Chevy meet at Fogelsville, up by Allentown.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was in the late 1980. Or no, I'm wrong. It was in about 2009, I believe, 2009. And this car was there. And it was neat for a national meet. I'm watching as the judges are walking over to it, and I'm hearing them saying between themselves that they're like, we don't know anything about this car. And I thought that was kind of neat. So they walk over to me, and they start judging it. But normally the judges don't talk to you at the national meets or anything, and here they did. And the one thing, it started out, the head judge, he looked over at me and he said, what would you say if I said that I think your wheels should not be varnished and they should be painted? And I said, well, I would say you're right. And he said, okay. Well, he said, since you were honest, he said, I'm not going to take off as much as we should. And I said, okay. And then he came over, and most of the Chevrolets in this time period, they're overhead valve, and like this one has no valve cover because they didn't from factory. The baby Grands did have.
Okay.
So he asked me, and the way he worded it was, what would you say if I said, I think you should not have a valve cover on this engine? And I said, well, then I would say you don't know what you're talking about, because this should have. And I had a parts book here, and I opened it up and I showed it to him. And he said, oh, okay. And then the next thing was he was questioning the wire loom, because it's a metal wire loom. And he said, what would you say if I said, I think it should be a cloth? And I said, no, I would say you're wrong. It should be a metal. Okay. And that was the way this whole car got judged at
it sounded like a game almost, you know?
Yeah, it was really funny to listen to him. And anyways, we got through it, and what I did was anything they asked, I told them the truth. And actually came out, it won really, it got a national first prize out there, but the way it was judged, it was kind of funny. And in fact, afterwards, one judge walked over to me and he said, are you going to the awards banquet tonight? And I said, no. I said, a friend of mine is. And he said, well, he asked who he was, and I told him, and he said, well, tell him he's going to do a lot of walking tonight. It turned out this won 2 awards, and he won 2 awards at that show.
Wow.
Yeah, so yes, even a lot of the judges and stuff don't know what is right on it. That's one thing that's nice with a car like this, as far as the national judging versus like a Model T Ford, they know what a Model T or a Model A should be.
Right.
On this kind of thing, they don't know a whole lot. Even the Chevy people, there's very few. You know, the people that really knew these cars are dying off.
Yeah, and you mentioned about the Fords. What was I going to say there? Yeah, about them knowing what's going on and the documentation and stuff. And they had the running changes, and the Model T and the Model A guys, you know, that's their hobby, is finding. Okay, yeah. And then you mentioned about this, like this car here is like half of 22 and half of 21, 23. Okay, and you know, so there was changes going on with that.
Yeah.
But that makes it even more difficult.
And 23 was a major change. The 490 series ended in 22. In 23 was the new model, the Superior.
Okay.
So that was a big change to take 2 different basic cars and make one out of, which is what Chevrolet did with that one. So yeah, it's although Ford used to do it to a degree too. And when he came out with the 1915 Model T, that was a lot of changes from the 1914. And Ford wasn't too sure that this was going to work out well, so what he did for a while, he was building 14s and 15s at the same time. So that makes it kind of hard now. You can't look at a certain number and say, well, this is exactly what it should be, because it may be a 14, it may be a 15. And so Ford was, with any of these cars, anyone that says they're an expert is pretty much a liar, because there's no such thing as an expert that knows everything about these, because there was so much that was done. You know, as far as they had plans of when they would change dates and stuff, but that isn't when they basically made changes when they ran out of the parts.
But that makes it interesting. I think if you're into the hobby and you're really into it, you know, you don't just buy a collector car and show it, but you do the restoration and stuff. And you know, is this the correct way to wire the headlight? Or
yeah,
you know, you mentioned those little pieces that look like a patch in there. You know, is that correct or is that not correct? You know, are they the correct rivet diameters? You know, it gets, I guess, probably fanatical, but you know, if you're into it, you know, that's all part of it. And,
well, one person told me years ago, and I found this to be really true, and he said, when you realize how much is out there that you do not know, that's when you're good. Up until that point, you're dangerous.
Okay. Yeah.
Because there is tons of this that no one has a clue when a lot of this was done.
Yeah. So. Okay.
Now you've been on 3 shows and talking about 3 different makes. We've had Ford, Han, and Chevy. Is there like a favorite? Is there one you favor over others? Or?
I guess it depends on the day of the week.
Yeah, your mood and the day.
Yeah. We have several that we really like and all, and that keeps it. Variety makes it a little bit nice. Yeah. So if you're in a Chevy mood one day, you're okay. You know, then you take these. Or one, it wasn't on your show, but it was in your museum. That Cosworth Vega.
Yes.
That I still hate, but I still have.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when we wanted to borrow Ron's Cosworth Vega for the museum, and I think you were kind of astounded that was the car we wanted to borrow, and not like one of these 2. Or
I remember talking to Dan, and I'm like, what do they want that for? I actually have some nice vehicles that they...
Well, I also remember you probably made a comment, you can borrow it as long as you want.
Yeah. Yeah, I really don't... like that one that much. In fact, whenever we go places, it goes somewhere, usually it's a second car, and my buddy Tom drives it because I don't even like getting in the car, and it's too low for me. So.
Well, these are both very cool, and thank you for coming today, as always, and we appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, the rain held up for you.
The rain held up, yes.
Yep.
Yes, but it's not over yet today, so hopefully it holds up the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Well, I think we had another good show here at Duryea Day this year.
I believe we did.
We did. We had some really good finds. Good job.
Well, thanks.
Did a good job. Good job. And some familiar faces, too. It was nice to see some previous guests come
absolutely.
back.
It seems like every time I turned around, there was more of them. Or I'd be talking to somebody and look over here, and they're waiting to talk to me. And it just... You know, it's neat to see that they keep coming back every year, and it makes me feel good. It builds my ego that these people actually want to talk to me.
Well, and also, you know, someone said to us, and there goes another previous guest behind you can't see off camera. There he goes. There he is.
And I didn't talk to him.
I know. I think I said hi, and that was it today.
That was more than I did.
Someone said to us as we were driving along, they're starting to recognize more people than cars, and I think that's getting to the point with us, which is neat. So thanks to everyone who came out today to Duryea Day, whether you came and brought a vehicle or you came as a visitor, a spectator. We appreciate your support. And thanks, of course, to our event sponsors, BB&T, Gablesville Athletic Association, Classic Auto Mall, Pollock Auto Restoration, and Suburban Water Technology. And thank you to all your support as well. And all the many food vendors, the food courts have been bustling.
I'll tell you what, I was near the food court earlier, and it was best to walk away because it smelled so good. I haven't eaten yet.
I'm hungry. I
had breakfast about 12 hours ago, so I'm ready.
Well, we're in the car corral actually now because you can also buy or sell a car here at Duryea Day. So I think it's time to close the deal here in the car corral. Let's go get lunch.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Everyone, we'll see you next month.